to get 899 to get 49 to get about 5,001.
Just take me through a day of auctioneering in
Oh
school.
my goodness.
I'm just
So
curious how it works.
let's go to the beginning. Hey, to get a 5 to get a 1 to get a 1 to get a 1, got to go down.
The higher end market is pretty much crashing on the wholesale side. Like these $30,000 cars, they're taking it.
Betty bought some butter, but she said this butter's bitter. If I put it in my batter, it'll make my batter bitter. So she bought a bit of better butter, put it in her bitter batter, right?
There's going to be a comeuppance of a lot of these dealers that were created over the last 3 years, I think, because they're going to start learning what the car market's supposed to look like starting now, I think.
My guys that were buying $10,000, $15,000 cars start buying $5,000, $6,000
Yep.
cars. I'm like, it's changing.
We're seeing right now that there are tons and tons and tons of no sales going through these auctions. And
Right.
It seems like it's just increasing. So what everybody is going to want to hear, they want to hear you spit for a while.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Get a bind, get a bit of 1, get a 51. So $5,000.
So Jonathan, you are a car auctioneer.
Right.
So did you grow up wanting to be a rapper and then that just kind of fell through? How does one get into auctioneering to begin with?
So it's a pretty wild story on how I got there. I wanted to paint cars, and that's a million miles away from auctioneering.
Right.
I took a job at a new car store to straighten the car lot. It was my job. I was a porter. And so my goal was they were going to build a body shop, and I wanted to go into the body shop and work my way up through that. And as I got into the dealership, some of the guys that worked the sales desk at the time realized that I knew cars.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they started doing was at night when they would get lazy and didn't want to go out and appraise the cars, they would throw me the keys, go drive this car, tell me what's wrong with it or what's right with it. And I was basically doing their walk around for them. And then it ended up I became used car manager after so many years.
This was at a new car store?
At a new car store, yeah.
Okay.
And so when I became new car manager, we were actually using an auction company to sell our trade-ins on site. And it was kind of a unique thing at the time. And I developed a friendship with the guy that owned the auction company. And years down the road, he had come to me and presented me an offer to come work for the auction company, but just to manage the crew.
Okay.
And so one of the things he wanted me to do, though, he wanted me to go to auctioneer school because you can be licensed but not be good. You can be licensed and not be able to chant. And he wanted me to get licensed, and so he could have, say, he had X amount of licensed auctioneers on the payroll or whatever.
Okay.
And so I went to the school. I had never done any public speaking ever.
And how old were you at this time?
Oh man, I was about 26 or so.
Okay, so still really young, yeah.
Yeah, fairly.
Yeah.
And so I'd never done any kind of public speaking, went to auctioneer school. And at auctioneer school, it's not a joke, but you're not coming out of there after 2 weeks and knowing what to do.
It's like a dealer certification class.
It's continuing education, right?
Yeah.
It's just, and so I went and I picked up a couple of things there. I came back not expecting to be auctioneering, and I started practicing, and every day I would practice, and I started to pick it up. And so they presented an opportunity for me and said, we'll let you get on the mic and sell some cars. Oh my goodness, man. The first time it was so bad.
So I'm assuming you probably fell in love with it going into that environment, or did it take some acquired, is it like an acquired taste for you to be up there on the stand and actually run through these numbers? So
yeah, I was kind of excited and nervous all at the same time.
Right.
It was so funny. The very first car I ever sold, there's everything we do is with a reserve for the most part.
Right.
And you have a seller beside you and you have to look at the seller and say, do you want to sell it or not? Basically. And they say yes or no. And the first one I actually auctioneered off, I finished and I said sold instantly without even asking him. And I was like, oh, and I looked over at him. I'm like, we can sell it. He's like, yeah, I guess so.
Oh yeah. So you might have cost yourself like $500 right there. And you didn't realize. Okay.
So, but yeah, and as I started to develop a rhythm and I got into a flow, I fell in love with it.
Right.
Yeah.
And was it the atmosphere? Had you been around auctions before that, or was this basically your first taste of auctions?
Well, so no, when I worked in a new car store and as I became used car manager, I actually would go and purchase inventory for the used car lot.
Okay.
We had plenty of trades, but we had a very big program car unit at the time. And that was back in the mid 90s. And so what we would do, we would go to the Chrysler factory sales, and man, we would go buy 50, 60 cars a day.
Wow.
To supplement that, because we were selling it. And I didn't even realize what we were doing in the new car store then, but we were selling like 250 used cars a month, and that was back in the heydays. I didn't have a clue. I just thought that's what we did.
That's a lot of cars.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
But we would go and we would just buy, and that was my first interaction with an auction,
Right.
is doing that. And so I think some of that was kind of in my subconscious just from hearing it so much.
Right.
And so as I started to develop my own chant as an auctioneer, I think all the other people, I don't want to go too far ahead, but all the other people I had heard do it before was kind of in here,
Right.
and it kind of just started to flow.
Okay. So when an auctioneer basically finds their voice, where it's because I've heard hundreds and hundreds of auctioneers, and no two auctioneers sound the same.
Mm-mm.
Even like the verbiage that they use, the words or the sounds that they put in between the numbers. How do you develop? You said that flow. How do you develop that flow? How do you find your own individual kind of words? Because I feel like when you're going to auctioneer school, they probably give you some hints, some little words to throw in between the numbers or whatever to help the flow keep going. Is that something that you learned in school, or did you develop kind of your own thing? How does that come about?
The initial filler word, that's what they call it.
Right.
It's a filler word. I picked that up at auctioneer school.
Okay.
They gave us some. They would give you a list, and you would experiment with those, try to put them in and see what rolled off your tongue better. That was the whole thing. Whatever you were comfortable with and would roll off your tongue.
What's your filler word?
Dollar bill.
Dollar bill.
And you would never know it now.
No, I can't. When I hear you auction, and now you're the absolute clearest auctioneer that I have ever heard in all the auctioneers that I've heard. You're the only one that I can literally pick out every single number that you're saying is clear and concise. And my grandfather that would go with me, he would always say that about you too, and he couldn't hear anything. Yeah. So
yeah, I appreciate that.
Yes, but you're always by far the best one. But it's interesting for you to say that you're saying dollar bill in between, because I can't hear that at all.
And it's evolved over the years. And what's funny is when I go to different auctions now, and there's things that make me want to auctioneer. It's hearing somebody that can't, but really hearing somebody that can.
Right.
And I don't have a problem saying somebody's better than me if I really truly believe that. But I will listen to them intently and say, okay, well, sometimes I don't even know what they're saying.
Right.
But I'll pick up on the sounds that they're uttering and try to, and I've known we've gone to some collector car auctions and I picked up some things. And when I come back and I pick up the mic without even trying, it just starts coming out. It's the weirdest thing.
All right. So does that get you really excited to actually hear a really good auctioneer? Does that make you want to try something different? Try to make yourself better as an auctioneer?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that, I did, and I want to throw this out here, and this is just kind of life in the midst of all of this. I got very prideful in it because people kept telling me I was good, and I started thinking I was good, and I started thinking I was the best, and that's not the case at all, and that's not the way to look at things. Like I was telling my wife the other day, I said, if people ask me what I'm good at, I'll tell you I'm a good auctioneer.
Right.
I'm not the best, but I'm good. But there's people better than me, and you have to acknowledge that and accept that. I think, look at those people and learn from them. But I tell you what I do. I learn as much from the people that are horrible too. You
learn what not to do.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So I have a question. I want to go back to auctioneer school in just a little bit, but I want to talk about like when you're up there on the stand. You see what these sellers are trying to sell these cars for.
Right.
So what goes through your mind when, okay, there's this 1998 Camry that they're pushing through the lane, and it's a $1,500 car, but the seller's got on their reserve, their card, $5,000.
Right.
What goes through your head whenever you see that? Because you literally are in real time. You're like, okay, I got to auction off this car, and you got to do it quick. But you're like, that's ridiculous.
It is. And I have a running joke that I say a lot of times to whoever's working the block with me, or whoever's in the ring, working the ring with me and stuff like that.
Right.
I'll joke when I know, because see, I know doing this so often and so much, I pretty much know what the car is going to bring, or close to it.
Yep.
There's still some that surprise me every day. But by looking at the floor, like you said, if it's a $1,500 car and they've got $5,000 as their reserve or their floor price, whatever you want to call it, I look over there and I'm like, they could probably need 3 of those to get that money. You know what I mean? And it's just a joke. But my job as an auctioneer is to get every dollar that I can as quick as I can, and just present that to them and let them make the decision. And if you have 100 of those, it's discouraging.
Right.
But one here and there, I can deal with it. But when you've got a seller over and over and over again that continues to bring numbers like that to the table, you get to where you just don't work quite as hard for them because it's unrealistic.
Right. So what qualities make a good auctioneer?
That's deep. There's a lot to that.
Mhm.
And see, that's the funny thing. People don't realize how much real time multitasking I'm doing while I'm auctioneering, all these thoughts at one time. And the best quality for me is you got to know that the thing that you're selling, let's say it's not even cars, let's say it's anything at all. If you're selling it as an auctioneer, that's not your product. Your service is your product.
Right.
And so you got to provide the best service, but you've got a buyer and a seller, and you got two bosses basically,
Right.
because you're working for both sides. And so what I want to try to make sure I do, I want to make sure that I get all the money for the seller, but I still want to make sure the buyer can take whatever they're purchasing. Let's say cars, because that's what we do, and they can still go back and make a profit, so they can come back again next week and buy more.
Right.
And you want to make sure it's working for everybody. But as an auctioneer, I can almost tell you, like a lot of times, I've even hollered your name across the auction. If you're looking at a different lane, I'm like, hey, this is something for you.
Right.
Because I know what you're going to buy.
Right.
And I know what everybody's going to buy. And I think when you know what everybody's going to buy, if I'm selling car A that's in front of me right now, I look over to see what car B is coming next. And I pretty much know who to look for to get my opening bid for the next car to get it going. And so it's just a constant. I don't know if that answers your question or
No,
not.
that's right. Yeah. I mean, you're basically trying to appease both the buyer and the sellers. You're trying to get the deal put together. So when you get these deals put together, I've always wanted to know this. I don't know why I've never asked you, but how do auctioneers get paid? Is it per time you're actually auctioneering for the current auction that you're in, or do you get bonuses per cars that you sell? Or
I get a flat rate.
You get a flat rate.
I get paid.
Has it always been like that?
Pretty much for me.
Okay.
Yeah. The only time that I had any of the kind of pay plan was when I actually worked for the auction company. I was on staff.
Okay.
And so I would get incentivized by how many cars we sold a month. And that was my incentive to make sure we sold as many as we possibly could.
But that was a different job because you were in the back end too. But as an auctioneer, I see all these auctioneers going to all these different auctions. Are they just getting cut a check for just that one auction?
Yeah. And the reason why most of it's set up that way, they have a running deal. It's either X amount of dollars a day, and that's pretty much what your check is.
Right.
Because the one thing that the auctioneer cannot do anything about or whatever is they can't predetermine how many cars are going to be there.
Right.
It's not fair to them to ask them to come in and you can only get so much money.
And if the seller's not going to come off a car, you can't control if they're going to actually sell the car or not.
You never know what you're going to get. So it's kind of one of those deals. I would love to have be incentivized, but I don't. My thing is I'm personally incentivized because I want to sell every one of them.
Right. But then thinking about too, car market's full of angels, right? We're all, everybody's honest and everything like this. But I feel like if you get to a point where you're incentivizing some of the auctioneers, maybe something dirty could happen where you get ghost bids come in, you get
you're gonna
that's already happening now, right? I mean, there's bad auctioneers out there. I see them all the time where they're hitting bids that aren't there.
Right.
Don't see it in the auction that you work in, and there's tons of auctioneers. For every one bad auctioneer, there's 9 great ones, right?
Right.
But it's just the industry that we're in, and I feel like if you go to that incentive model, then it probably would pull out more of the bad seeds, and
it would definitely open the door. And the car business, everybody's going to find a loophole and everybody's going to work in the gray. Right. That's what everybody wants to work. They don't want to work in the black and white. They want to work in the gray.
Right.
And because in the gray is where they can kind of be a little bit shady and do different things. I've seen auctioneers what we call drop the hammer quick or knock cars to people.
I've seen that.
And I guarantee you they got a check in the parking lot when they got done. I've seen it happen. And I'm like, dude, I was standing over here because I buy cars too.
Right.
I was standing over here waving my hand and you just purposely like looked through me. Like I wasn't like winking at you. I was waving at you and you and your buddy over here and you keep loading his truck and you didn't give me any.
Right.
And see, that's one of the things I don't want to do. One thing I will do, because I have control of that hammer all the time when it falls and when it doesn't. If somebody like you is in the lane bidding, you or some of the other guys we know, some good guys, the hammer's going to fall quicker in your direction than it is somebody that's giving us problems. If we got somebody that we have to chase for money or somebody that's always arbitrating cars or somebody that's causing problems, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, we've already got the car sold, I'm going to be more apt and quicker to drop the hammer on somebody that I know is not going to give any issues.
Right.
And see, people don't understand that aspect of it, but that's the thing that my job is too, is to make it as clean and as smooth as I possibly can.
Well, see, and working in the auctions too, you've seen the back end, so you can add that kind of perspective when you're in the lane, because when you're there for the auction owners and you're working for them trying to get these deals done, you know what they don't want to deal with too.
Right.
So it's better for someone like me that's going to pay them and going to pay them today,
Yeah.
than someone that's going to, because you deal with arbitration process too.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure there's some headaches with that too.
And I'm telling you, if you're a habitual arbitrator and you just want money knocked off so you can go home feeling better about your purpose, I'm not saying I'm going to 100% not sell you the car, but you're going to have to earn it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And it's just the way the thing goes. I mean,
so, okay, let's do story time real, because you've known me now for 12 years. Yeah. So when I first started, and me and Matt kind of talked about this when I interviewed him, you guys, I know, had to be so aggravated with me, because I still do it to this day. I'm not as bad, but I will not work with a seller whatsoever. You're done. When I'm done, whatever the money brings up to, that's what I'm going to buy it for. Or, you know what, we'll run it again next week. How frustrating is that as an auctioneer when you have, let's say, just on both sides, a stubborn bidder like me, or a stubborn seller that, you know what, we're just stuck. If you don't sell it to me on the block, we'll just run it again next week.
You know, that used to be frustrating to me.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, man, I just worked so hard to try and get this thing sold. I just need a little bit of help. And it's funny you should bring that up, because there's so many different things that go on the auction block that people don't even see.
Right.
And if you're a high bidder and you don't buy the car, they've got too much money in it. That's the way I look at it. And I've thrown out to you before. I say, hey, I need this, and you're like, no, I'm good. I'm fine. Okay. And I'll tell my seller, dude, I couldn't raise him with a floor jack. I was like, it's not happening, right? There's nothing I'm going to say that's going to get him to even give another $100.
Right.
But that being said, there are times to where I know I've got some guys bidding that don't pay all the money, or I don't have anybody to take the person where we need to be to sell the car. There's a floor. The floor is $2,500. If we're at $1,600, we haven't got the car sold yet,
Right.
And if I know the car is worth that, a lot of times I don't even give the seller an opportunity. I'll start before I get done chanting. If Robert's in the ring, I'll say, hey, Robert, it takes 25. He's already going over there to start working on that, because I know that guy's going to give a little bit more,
right?
But I don't have to beat his brains out auctioneering.
And we say, Robert, that's your floor
the
guy.
ring guy.
Yeah.
And I can say, hey, go ahead. And he'll go ahead over there. And a lot of times we'll get $2,200 and we get the car sold.
Right.
You got to know that that's there. And that's another just thing that you have to know by learning your buyers.
And so what I found too, and me and Matt talked about this. Matt is the auction owner that we did an interview with, but right. It seems like what I've learned and what I've found out very early. I mean, when I was 22, 21, 22, bidding on these cars, if I say no and I start walking away, about 75% of the time, they're just going to sell me the car. And then the other 25% of the time when they don't sell me the car, I'm going to buy it for $300 cheaper next week. Yeah. So first money, best money, right?
It's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's my principle on it. The first time that thing shows its face at the sale, it's going to bring what it's supposed to, or it's going to bring all it's going to.
So we're seeing this dynamic, and I don't want to get too much in what's going on with the market right now, because we cover that verbatim, right? But we're seeing right now that there are tons and tons and tons of no sales going through these auctions. And It seems like it's just increasing. Is that, you feel like, because you deal with these sellers, is it a factor of there being just such a steep drop of the appetite of these dealers wanting to bid up these cars? Or is it that these sellers are being too stubborn and not wanting to lower their prices because they need to be lowered right now?
So I think there's a lot to it. I think there's multiple layers to that. I watch the trends in the market.
Mm-hmm.
When we went through the pandemic and all that, and everything was crazy, and everybody had free money, and everybody's spending money like it's going out of style. Cars were bringing all the money. Sales percentages were about 100% all the time. And I used to joke with the other auctioneer when we get done, I'm like, man, we didn't even have to work today.
Right.
We just counted. We didn't work.
Yeah.
And the cars, to me, the quality was better because people were trading because they wanted to, not because they needed to.
Right.
Right now, we're in a season where people are trading cars because they have to. and you got to be seeing it in some of the stuff you're buying.
Yep.
These cars, when we get them back to the shop and we start looking at them, you're like, oh my gosh, it's like problem after problem after problem that we got to spend so much money in the shop to get them back up to par to where we feel good with putting our name on them, putting them in the street. You're like, okay, these people traded because they had to.
Right.
And then we're all getting burned on different things that we're having to just, take a loss on and move on. But we're in that cycle right now to where people that are trading have to trade. The problem is in the new car store, they had gotten so comfortable in punching it into whatever app they use to appraise cars. It tells them that they put the money in the car. They don't ever walk outside and look at it.
Right.
So now what happens is the car goes to the sale. 100 of y'all look at it. Everybody figures out everything that's going on with the car, and it's going to bring less money than it did. And the new car stores are still sitting here scratching their head trying to figure out why it brought $3,000 less than the book said.
Right.
You didn't account for the rest of the stuff. So it's a lot of different facets coming together at one place. And the guys got to get back up and walk outside and look at cars.
And you feel like we're going more towards that as they continue to get burned on a lot of these cars at auctions. Are we going to revert back to the mean?
Yeah, I think so, because going all the way back to my beginning, I said they had me start appraising cars because I knew cars, and I could come back in and tell them, hey, this thing's got a wheel bearing out and needs 2 tires and needs this, that, and the other.
Right.
And we could kind of assess it. You know what I mean? But they haven't been doing that. And I think that when they start looking at these no sales, because they're going to have to look at them, you got to figure out, hey, why are we missing this car by $3,000? And that's what's happening. When we miss one right now, we're missing it by a country mile. I'm like, it ain't even close.
Right.
And they're going to have to start looking at them. They're going to be like, oh, we missed all this. And I think when the new car stores start making the adjustment, the sales percentages will come back up. But it's one of those times where the market used to change all year.
Yeah.
And you go up and down, and you knew what was going to happen.
Right.
And for the last 4 years, it hadn't been like that.
Right. And what I feel like now, and what me, Matt, and Ben talked about the other day, is that we feel like we're going to get back to seasonality now.
Yes.
And it's not just this continuous ramp up of prices go up, 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 everybody trying to buy everything all the time. Now we're going to get to where, okay, we have a slow Christmas now. We're going to have a slow summer. Tax time's going to pop some prices. We're going to get our little bump in the fall or whatever.
Right.
And I feel like overall the trend's going to be down because with interest rates, demand's just going to continue to stay low. But I feel like we're going to get back to those seasons where, okay, car prices are high now because tax checks.
Yeah.
Car prices are low now because of middle summer, people are on vacation, and it's going to just be back to what we're used to. Do you feel like that's going to be the case?
Yeah. And I used to could tell you by holding the microphone when it changed.
Right.
I could feel it. And I felt it start to change, softening up, I guess you would want to call it, the market. Probably 6-8 weeks ago.
Right.
I started seeing people buy different cars. My guys that were buying $10,000-$15,000 cars start buying $5,000-$6,000 cars. I'm like, it's changing. And, that's the buy here, pay here market. It's really going to be a transition point now because these guys aren't going to start keep financing these $15,000 cars.
Oh, they can't.
I mean, it's going to eat their lunch.
Right.
And so they're coming back down. And because now you're having to bid against guys you didn't have to bid against before.
It's interesting, and I'm seeing all this other stuff in the data where, okay, the higher end market is pretty much crashing on the wholesale side. Like these $30,000 cars, they're taking it, and it's going way down. And I'm seeing that the data is saying that because these guys are getting pushed more to the lower end stuff, the stuff that I buy, that should push the market, but I'm not seeing it. What I'm seeing is that me and Alex, when we go to these auctions, we're getting better prices now than we were a month ago.
Yeah.
So it's confusing to me to see that data, but not seeing it on the ground. And I'm almost curious that maybe the market, the actual sales on these retail lots is so bad right now that, okay, these guys that want to buy cheaper stuff, they can't.
Right.
So I'm wondering if maybe they've tapped out some of their credit. Are you seeing a lot of these floor plan buyers that you had seen over the last year? They're
a lot of them's gone. Yeah. Well, not gone, but not coming.
Right.
I mean, they got to work through that stuff. And we've talked about that before. That's a very sensitive thing. It's a bad situation, really, if you have to be in that.
Right.
I mean, I see so many guys that they work just to pay the floor plan. And I mean, I hate to see anybody work so hard for something like that, but it's, if you want to be in the business, some guys have to use it. And, but yeah, I think that the market's changing. I just want to see us have a normal year next year.
I
you
don't.
know?
I think we're a long way because there's still no inventory. There's
Right.
no inventory. Some of these auctions that I would go to, the one that's right down the street right here, they would run 900 cars a week before the pandemic,
Yeah.
and they're lucky to get 400 still
Right.
right now.
Right.
It's like it's been cut in half. The big sale that you pick up cars from me from, I mean, that they're half,
Yeah.
and it's been like that for the last 3 years. And there's just the new car dealers have to start selling some cars on their lot for us to get any kind of inventory. Um, but anyway, I want to
Well,
go.
I'll tell you, I'll
Okay, go
go
ahead.
back to something
Yep.
right there. I tell you one thing that did change with the pandemic, and I actually had one of our sellers tell us this when they were having the customers come in and order cars, right, and then they would appraise the trade.
Mm-hmm.
By the time that the car came in from the factory, the customer had sold the trade on their own. And so as the customers are selling the trades themselves, there's not as
Right.
many coming into the dealership.
Right.
So I know that's another channel that we're losing inventory out of,
Yep.
because everybody can put their car on marketplace now and sell it.
All right. So you mentioned about floor plans a little bit earlier. So I have a ton of dealers that actually watch this channel, and they'll listen to this, whether it be a podcast or whatever. What is your opinion on a floor plan, and what would your advice be to dealers that are listening to this on floor plans?
Oh my gosh, you asked me the wrong question. So we had one
Mm-hmm.
years ago, and we were selling a good number of cars. And I came back to Rob and my wife, and I said, "This doesn't make any sense because we're still paying all these curtailments constantly." One of my pet peeves was I couldn't get a mechanic to fix a car in time, and I'm paying for the car to set at the mechanic shop for 30 days.
Right.
I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And we sat down one of the last few months that we had an actual floor plan, and we actually paid them more than we took home that month.
Wow.
And I mean, and I've done this for a long time. I've done this for this year's my 28th year. I know how to do it. It wasn't that I forgot how to sell cars. It was the fact that, they just they'll bleed you dry,
Right.
you know. Um, and what we do now is we just use our own money, and we try to stay within what we have. I think a lot of guys try to outkick their coverage on those floor plans.
Yep.
I think they buy cars that they don't necessarily need to buy, and when you're spending somebody else's money, it's so much easier for you to keep putting your hand in the air.
And it doesn't feel real.
It doesn't.
It doesn't
It's
feel
fake.
real. Yep.
So go back to what I told you when I worked in the new car store. That was like I felt like I was Superman. I'd go to the auction. You go to the auction and buy 60 cars, and they average $16,000 a piece. I just kept raising my hand like it wasn't no big deal because it wasn't my money. I was doing what I was instructed to,
Right.
but I didn't feel it.
Right.
Now, when you got to have those conversations with the floor plan company, and you've got to write those checks back to them for all the fees and everything like
Then
that,
it becomes real
it's
quick.
like, oh gosh,
Yeah.
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 But my 2 cents on that, I would say, work within what you have, stay within your means.
Right.
Don't try to be as big as everybody else. Be as big as you can be. And it's not all about. So I grew up in a volume dealership.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have the same mentality. Man, I think make some money. Let's roll and go get another one.
Yep.
We're gonna figure out where to get it from. But a lot of these guys, they're trying to make so much per car. And I think they end up getting themselves in the trick bag with that too.
Well, they've been able to do it for the last 3 years too,
Sure.
and it's done. It's done. You can't. You're not going to make $4,000 on a $10,000 car anymore.
No.
That's times have changed, and people aren't going to be able to pay it. Banks aren't going to loan on that anymore.
Right.
So there's going to be a comeuppance of a lot of these dealers that were created over the last 3 years, I think, because they're going to start learning what the car market's supposed to look like starting now, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, that's one of the things, like I said, I learned in the new car store early on is we didn't necessarily make a ton per car, but that's how we were able to sell 250 used cars a month.
Right.
And we kept it turning. It was a
Move 'em.
machine. And the thing with that is, we had our own shop and everything as well. And so we have all those cars going through the shop, and we're making money that way. And it was just, it flowed so much better, but we weren't greedy about it. And I think that when you get to that point, I mean, you just you're going to end up costing yourself in the long run.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, I agree too. So auctioneer school. Just take me through a day of auctioneering
Oh
school.
my goodness.
I'm just
So,
curious how it works. Yeah.
Let's go to the beginning.
Okay.
The funniest thing is the beginning, right?
Right.
So I went, the first day was a Sunday afternoon. Okay. And I show up. Auctioneer school was a funny time for me. I was pretty hefty back then. I was pretty hefty. I was a big boy. And I go in, I'm a nervous wreck. And they gave me this little package and it had a cassette tape in it.
Yeah.
And they're like, you got to get in line at that table over there with that cassette tape. And he'll call you when he's ready for you. It's a little table like this, guy sitting where you're sitting. I had to sit on the other side. Sit down at the table, hand him my tape. He puts it in the tape recorder. Telling him how old I am. But he puts it in the tape recorder and he hits record. He says, now read that placard on the table right there and then go. On the table, did Matt tell you this? Matt
No,
didn't tell you
Matt didn't
this?
tell me this. Yeah.
There's a porcelain ceramic pig, about this big, but it's got one of the legs broke off of it.
Yeah.
Okay. On the placard, it says, my name is enter the blank, fill in the blank, Jonathan, and this is my very first day at auctioneer school. I'm going to attempt to sell this 3-legged pig. And it said something like go. And I was like, I read it and I'm like, what do I do? You know, I'd never sold anything like that. And I was like, would you bid? I didn't even say, would you bid? I was like, can I get one? Can I get two? You know, can I get three? And I didn't know what I was doing. And it was so bad. And I need to find the tape. I have it somewhere. But so that's how it got started. And then so each day as we would come in, and like I said, this was 2 weeks long, they would have us as grown people walk around the room doing tongue twisters. Betty bought some butter, but she said this butter's bitter. If I put it in my batter, it'll make my batter bitter. So she bought a bit of better butter, put it in her bitter batter, right? We had to walk around saying that over and over and over again. You know, around the rough and rugged rock, the ragged rascal ran. We'd just do that for a long time. And I'm like, this is so stupid.
That seems genius though, because just hearing you say that, it sounds exactly like what you do on the stage, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so we did that. And then we would work on our chant. We'd work on the filler words.
Right.
And so they would have us chant out loud and it'd be like $1 bill. I can't even stop it now. $1 bill, $2 bill,
right.
$3 bill. And then we'd start to try and roll. And some people would say the filler word would be, would you go? And sometimes I use would you bid too. Sometimes would have bid one, would have bid two, something like that. Okay. Would you bid one? Would you bid two? And we'd start working on that.
How do you choose what you're going to say? Is it just you don't even think about it anymore?
No, okay. It just flows.
Okay.
It's the weirdest thing. I don't even know how to. And some days I sound completely different than I do other days. To me, I do. But so we went through that. And then what they did with it is they also did a charity auction with it for St. Jude's. And everybody was asked to get somebody in their local community to donate 3 items of about $10 a piece. And at the final, we came in, we had a St. Jude's charity auction. Everybody brought their stuff and we sold it. And it was open sale. It was like the public was there and everything. And we got to get up on the mic and actually do the auctioneering in front of the public.
Very cool.
It was cool, but it was scary.
I bet that was scary. I'd be a nervous wreck, especially when you're new to it. So how long did you go through auctioneer school? Okay. How long was auctioneer school?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
And did you have it by the end of 2 weeks?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Did anybody, or you just go away from it and you figure it out?
No. There was 2 kids there. Two younger guys there. Right. They were actually from different states. See, you have to have a license in North Carolina to do real estate and stuff like that. And to do any kind of cars, you don't have to have a license. The reason he wanted us to get licensed is just so we could say we have the license numbers to list on our company. But so these kids had to come from a different state, and they were actually auctioneers already, but they had to come sit through the school and do it so that they could take the test, because you had to take the school to take the test. You couldn't go take the North Carolina test without taking an accredited school.
So to be an auctioneer, you have to take a test to get the certification to be an auctioneer. Just for you out there listening, I am a licensed used car dealer. I can write loans. I can sell vehicles. I can say, okay, this car is safe and it's not going to kill you while you're driving down the road. I have that kind of responsibility on my shoulders. I have to take any test.
Yeah.
Literally go to the class and they give me a paper. There you go.
Yeah. I mean, so we went to the school, did all that. And then when I came out, like I said, I worked for an auction company, and what I would do, they would let me get up and sell 5 or 10 cars at the auction each day. And so at that time, the beautiful thing about it was the auction company I worked for, we were doing about 30 auctions a month. So every day, every day I had an opportunity to get on the mic.
Okay. So when you're on the block, how long do you want a car to actually? I know it's going to be all over the place, but what is your target? Do you have a target of like how long you're auctioning off a car before you sell it?
So I try to hit a number per hour.
Okay.
And I kind of watch my phone. And everybody's like, why do you keep tapping your phone? I'm looking at the time.
Right.
Okay. I'm trying to keep up with where I'm at, just trying to keep it rolling. I like to go as fast as I can.
Right.
My ultimate number though is to sell 55 an hour.
Okay.
So, it's a little more than a minute a car.
Right. And I've gauged it before, and it lines up right at about a minute a car.
Yeah.
Yep.
So between saying sold, moving on, and doing everything, yeah, that's what I try to shoot for. We've done a lot more than that in the past, but yeah, it's usually about 55 an hour.
Okay. So what everybody is going to want to hear, they want to hear you spit for a while.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So can you just go through for us? Let's go from 2,000 up to 5,000 and sell it at 5,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And to get about a 2001, and to get about a 21.2, to get about a 23 phone, to get about a 5, to get about a 25, to get about a 6.7, 27 now, hey, and to get 8.99, to get about a 29, to get about a 3,001 now, to get about a 31.2, and to get about a 2, to get about a 3 phone, to get a 5, to get about a 6, to get about a 7, to get 8, to get about a 39, to get a 4,001, and to get a 41, to get about a 2, 3, now 4, 4, to get a 5, to get a 45, 6, 9, 7 now, hey, and to get 8.99, to get a 49, to get about a 5,001, and to get a 5, to get a 1, to get a 1, to get a 1, 1, got to go down, to get a 5, to get a 1, 1, 1, to get a 51. So $5,000.
Awesome. So one thing I find interesting, so the stereotypical thing, we see something on TV, you hear an auctioneer, they're doing the going once, going twice, gone. I don't hear that ever. I don't think I've ever heard an auctioneer, and I've heard hundreds, use that terminology in the auto space.
Right.
Is that something that at auctioneer school, did they teach you to, they say don't do this, or is it just something that I'm curious to know where that stereotype comes from, or because
it's from Tiffany's, I think.
Really?
It's like something they do in those really, hoity-toity, big firm and proper auctions where the guy's like, I have 21. Now would you go 22,000 or whatever?
It's like the art auctions.
It's the same, and they'll do that.
Yeah.
But when we do, because we're doing a charity auction this weekend, when I do charity auctions, I do it because people have that conception, the public, that people don't go to auctions every day. They think that's the way it's supposed to go.
All right.
So I'll be like 21 going once, and I'll do it that way. 21 going twice. Sold 21, whatever.
Okay.
And I will do it in a public setting
because that's what they think is supposed to happen.
That's exactly right. They got it beat into their mind.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell me what this charity thing is.
All right. So my wife, she is a personal trainer. Robin is hooked up with Project Athena, and what they do is they take people that are survivors, and it can be survive anything.
Mm-hmm.
Cancer, a lot of them are cancer survivors. On the next trip that she's going to do in the Keys in 10 days, I think, there'll be some folks that are blind, and they're going to bike and kayak from Key Largo to Key West. And she goes along to assist and help with that. And what it is just to take people and just take them to an extreme just event. Extreme conditions,
something that they could never wish that. I mean,
they wouldn't even try,
right?
And show them what they're capable of, and take them through it. She has to raise the money for her to go and for one of the survivors, because it's completely free for the survivors. And so what we're going to do, we're doing a big party this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do it down at Jackalope Jack's in Charlotte. We got a bunch of stuff donated. We got,
but you're running an auction, right?
But we're going to have a silent and a live auction there. Okay. Matt's going to be there to help us with it. All the proceeds will actually be going to the Project Athena.
Okay.
And
so if you want to hear a live auctioneer and go help out a good cause, I'm going to put a link down in the description below for, is it on a website?
Yeah, we can get you all that.
Yeah, we'll put a link down in the description below. Check it out. You can bid online, so you don't even have to be close to us. But if you're in the Charlotte area, if you want to drop by and see him, auctioneer, bring some money, help out a good cause, buy some stuff.
Yeah, it's completely free.
You'll get to bid. So you always want to go to auctions with me. This is the next best thing. So
yeah, it'll be a blast.
Yeah, go check this out. And is there another way that they can donate? Because there's probably going to be some people that watch this video after the auction's done. We'll find a way.
We'll get a QR code or something.
Yeah, to put a link down in the description below to go and donate to a good cause. But
Jonathan, man, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for letting me interview you, and subscribe. This is a new channel. Subscribe, like. I never know how to end these things.
Yeah, it's always awkward.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you.
All right.